This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Today, we're going to explore a big question. Who am I?
Hey, Kat, Dylan. That's not the question in the billboard. What's going on?
What's going on is we're not doing the show that we were planning on doing.
What do you mean we're not? Kat, we go on in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
what do you mean we're not doing it?
We're just going to toss the show out the window and do something else.
Why? What?
Because I don't know who I am.
What do you mean you don't know who you are?
I don't know who I am.
Do you need to, ground or something? Should we do yoga?
Yeah, that'd be great, actually. Or maybe listen to some music?
Okay, we can listen to some music.
Okay, let's listen to some music.
You think we can pull this together in the next 5 minutes?
I believe in us.
I guess you'll find out right after the news. From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Where We Live. I'm Dylan Reyes, in with Catherine Shen here today, and I want to ask you one question. Who is Catherine Shen? Like, in your mind right now, I want you to build an idea of who this voice is that guides you through these conversations every day. What do you really know about what makes Cat Shen Cat Shen? Got it? Okay, we're going to really build on that today. And we're going to do it by doing a record poll. So we've actually done this before. Kat brought some songs. I brought some songs. And the idea of a record poll is not really just to share music. As Dr. Susan Rogers says in her book, This Is What It Sounds Like. One of the happiest outcomes of a record poll is the opportunity to discover something new about the way your companions think and feel. And now here to do that is Kat herself. Hi, Kat. Thanks for joining me today.
Hooray.
What's your first song you got for us?
So it's a song from a Taiwanese band called Mayday. And of course, we're going to go deeper into why I chose this song. But Mayday plays a really big role in my life because it's the first band from Asia that I've heard sort of do the punk rock sound, which is something I really enjoy. And what makes them unique too is they were formed in the late 90s and they really blew up in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s sort of time frame. And that's important to know because they were probably one of the very few, if not one of the first bands to sing and write in Taiwanese.
I think if there was one thing that people probably knew about your identity from the outside, it would just be that you're Taiwanese American.
Probably.
So I want you, before we get started with this song, just with me here. Close your eyes. You're back in Taiwan. It's the dead of summer. You're in the middle of middle school. What are you seeing? What color is it? Like, what does it smell like? What does it sound like?
It smells humid.
Yeah.
My eyes are open now because I got to make eye contact with you when we're chatting. It smells humid. There's a thickness and a density when you are living on an island that's pretty much close to the equator. And summers are super hot. And I am picturing actually where I went for elementary school. And I see blue skies. I see the walkways going into the classroom. And I think the reason why I'm saying that is because that was when I first learned about this band. I think it's like late elementary or early middle school. But their influence on me didn't come until much later, actually. And so maybe this is the place to share that when I just rediscover the band, probably about 20 years later, or close to 20 years later, I am reminded of a memory that I didn't realize I had because it probably was the summer time frame that I have a memory that my dad and I were going somewhere. Like, he would take me out, we go play somewhere, and there's a lot of third spaces where we lived, and so we would go out and just have a good time. And I remember we were at a school, and so I don't hear this too much here in the U.S., but especially in Asia, a lot of musicians and bands will play on campuses. And especially if they are sort of up and coming or they're just trying to make their break and all that. And so I remember seeing them at this school, but I had no idea who they were because they were kind of nobody at the time. And then the next thing I knew, they exploded. And then I realized, like, oh, I saw them that day. And so that memory was kind of squirreled away for many, many years. And then when I rediscovered them later, that memory actually came back to me very quickly. And it was kind of a magical moment of like, wow, I didn't realize this band was in my life.
But they've been there the whole time.
They've been there the whole time.
So for those people who might not know, what is the significance of singing in Taiwanese specifically versus maybe Mandarin or Cantonese?
So I think, well, Taiwanese is a language that most people or people who are not in the space would not be familiar with or not even realize that it's a language. And sadly, too, it's a disappearing language. It's an older language that if you don't really have older relatives who speak it, people in my generation actually, it's already disappearing when I was living there, let alone today. And there are movements, thankfully, to sort of keep it alive and to sort of rejuvenate it. But that's why it's so significant, because you don't hear that very often anyway, let alone a young band that didn't really have a place in the music world yet. And it's also what made them unique at the time. I think as we're speaking today, there are plenty of bands out there who embrace that, which I love hearing it. And I'm sure for people who are multilingual, when you hear a certain sound that you don't really hear and it comes at you randomly or when you don't expect it, there is a beauty in that. And it's just like nothing makes me smile more and turn into like a crazy person, because I literally will, if I hear a Taiwanese or if I hear the Taiwanese language spoken down the street in some random room or space, I will turn to you and be like, oh my God.
Your head like turns and you're like,
because,
oh.
Yeah, it's funny because like my friends and I joke how we're not that rare.
Yeah.
But we're rare in certain places. And so, totally. I mean, I kid you not, I was in a sauna a couple years ago here in Connecticut. And there's an older couple. It was just the three of us, and they were just chatting. But they were chatting in Taiwanese. It took me about 45 seconds to be like, "You have to say something."
So did you work up the courage to talk to them?
Oh, I totally did. I started talking to them. It was great, and it was just when you're someone who doesn't have immediate family around you who speak the language, and you hear that from a stranger in a place that you didn't expect, it is always a really magical and beautiful thing to me.
Oh, certainly. I mean, I'm thinking of the second generation experience that I'm going through. I'm second generation Filipino. And for a lot of the kids that emigrate to the United States, they don't really teach their kids Tagalog, which is one of the main dialects in the Philippines. I would say the main three are Tagalog, Ilocano, and Bisaya. And then there's a government language, Filipino, which is mostly made up of Tagalog. But most of the dialects I can pick out, and you're, especially since in Connecticut, I have not really found many Filipino friends. As soon as I hear it, it's like swing. All of a sudden, my radar goes off because I'm like, someone else.
Right, like you're best friends, right? We're best friends already.
Adding on to that, it was just so magic when I started talking to Isaac Moss, and I found out that she's also part Filipino, because instantly you have this cultural connection and you have all these things that are so foundational to you, even if you don't really know it. I'm half Filipino, so I'm still trying to figure out what that means for me.
Well, and then another reason why I chose this song specifically because, so taking us back to probably roughly the 2010 era, when I was still on Facebook having a good time, it was because one of my friends had posted a music video of theirs. I had not listened to a Chinese song in ages, and I don't really have an opportunity to use it in my daily life. But for some reason, that evening, I saw that post. I decided to click on it, not realizing that click was going to change my entire life. And so that was fast forward 10 years, 15 years later after I moved back to the States. And so I really removed myself from that culture, not because I really wanted to, but I'm back in a place that I was familiar with. And as we've been in conversation before, I was too busy assimilating back to this society. And so that's something that I just sort of suppressed, like I think many first-gen, second-gen Asian Americans do. And so when I clicked on that, it's not this song, but it was that song called Starry Skies that there's something about that song that drew me in. And when I'm drawn into something, I want to know everything about it. So naturally, I listened to the song 25 million times.
Yeah, that's how discovering a new song works. You
Right.
listen to it until you're absolutely sick of it.
Right. And a lot of Asian Americans who don't have the language to help them understand their culture, many will learn it through singing Mandarin songs. And I mean, I was privileged to have had Mandarin Chinese Foundation since I went to school in Taiwan for my elementary school and middle school years. So I knew the language, and so I had that going on for me. And so, of course, I went through their entire backlog at the time. I watched all of the interviews. And because of that, it actually showed me how important it is, at least to me, to relearn or improve the language that I already knew. And since then, I mean, it used to be where I lost the language for a while, and then my friends in Taiwan will laugh because I had the most horrific American accent. And they're like, what happened? It's only been a couple of years. And I was like, well, I mean, I was busy doing other things. But that, I don't think I've actually, or what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't think my life has been the same since I clicked on that post. All those years ago, because I realized the loss I had. And so I don't think I ever want to be in that space again, and I don't think I will.
It's interesting how scarily similar of a connection I have to, reconnecting with the Filipino part of myself, because I think that's certainly true. Sometimes you just have a split moment that you can really pinpoint that changed your life. I often find that I don't really have that for a lot of the things. I very slowly shifted into the person I am. But there are two specific instances that I can really remember. One is when I clicked on a YouTube recommendation of an OPM song in 2022. OPM stands for Original Filipino Music. It's this very ballad-driven popular music that was coming out of the Philippines in the late 70s to mid 80s. And even after the Marcos regime fled to Hawaii, it was still coming out. But the predecessor to that I found was the Manila Sound, which is this really cool, like Southeast Asian style of funk. So my pick here is a band called VST & Co. There's this really funny video of them in the early martial law days recording the video for Tayo Magsayan. And it's just got this amazing 70s sound. So the moment that I can really remember where I consciously decided that assimilation really wasn't my goal was I was sitting in history class, I think either my junior or my senior year. I can't remember because I had the same teacher both years. Someone who I, really considered a friend turned to me and he said, I'm glad you don't smell like the other brown kids. What am I supposed to do with that? I just remember being shocked that, and it really shouldn't have been surprising, but when you're 16, you want to believe in a better world. So...
Well, the fact that someone actually said that to your face and thinking that it's not.
Thinking that it's a nice thing to say. Like he said it, I assume trying to be polite, or not polite, but trying to give me a compliment. But like, man. And I think that that's when I realized that, you want to fit into a culture where you live. And that's totally understandable. But you don't want to give up too much of yourself. And there's a way in which you're trying to appeal to an audience that will never really understand you.
Well, and I think it's interesting you brought up when that happened to you, is because we're both talking about ages where we are at the most impressionable. And because you're talking about high school. I mean, I'm going into high school during this time frame, and I was not in high school when I discovered the band, but the experience you're sharing is something that I'm familiar with too. I think when you're a teenager, regardless, you're always performing for an audience in some ways. Mm-hmm. But when you have that layered complexity of not looking like the majority, and especially at the time, I'm assuming probably the same for you too, where I didn't have the language to guide me through those experiences. I didn't have people around me that could help me unpack all of that. And it certainly was not a time when you talked about that with your friends. We're in a very different place today. I mean, if you told high school Kat that adult Kat was going to discuss about these experiences with bestie colleague on a radio show through music, she would have been like, "You crazy."
Yeah, that's mind-blowing.
Right?
I mean, the amount of progress we've made, but also the amount of progress we still have to go.
Sure.
So we never actually touched on why you made that song.
No, this is how conversations happen. And it relates to what you're talking about too, where just sort of button up why this song in particular is important because it's in Taiwanese. There's a lot of history behind that too. There's a lot of political weeds that I'm not going to get into today, but it's sort of to me, especially when I was re-exposed to this band in my early 20s, I think there's a rebelliousness behind that really appealed to me. And I was also in a place where I was looking for a job, getting a job, finding my way in a career that's not easy to get into, and having no one around me really who believed in what I wanted to do. You would think that me telling people that I want to be a journalist, it's almost like telling them I want to be a movie star. Like that's how far away it is for them. And so when I found this band and I chose this song, so when I went through their backlog and realizing that they wrote a lot of Taiwanese music, this song appealed to me because, so the title, and I'm loosely translating things because it's so hard to translate directly, as you know.
Yes.
But the title of the song is called Gong Lang, and it basically means like a fool, a silly human, kind of like a dum-dum. And the song kicks off by, the first lyric basically says, I feel the heaviness of this world and I'm afraid to shake that world. I'm not a particularly good kid or a bad kid. I just like to daydream. I don't want to be a sheep and go with what society expects me to do. I'm like a boat without a rudder, but I don't want to just be another person doing the thing that everyone is doing. And because of that, I'd rather be a fool. Like I'd rather be a daydreamer. I'd rather be a silly human, a dum-dum. So I discovered this song when I was in my early 20s trying to discover who I am.
Yeah.
And what I want to do with my life. And so I chose this version too. It's a live version. I think it was performed in 2020, 2021 timeframe. And this is a band that they formed in 1997. So they've been around for a while and they're still very popular today. And I think I chose this version because I kind of wanted to showcase that this is still something really relevant. And one of the reasons why they were basically called the Beatles of Asia. And one of their appeals is a lot of their music is about young people trying to learn about themselves and discover the world while trying to meet or break expectations around them. So when you first started playing it, I'm like, I'm going to start crying now. Thanks.
The actual Beatles, by the way, chased out of the Philippines because they turned down breakfast with First Lady Imelda Marcos.
See, there's always a connection. I mean, they were also inspired by the Beatles.
So you mentioned the difficulty of translation,
Yes.
which certainly for non-Roman script languages is compounded because the way you form a word is different.
Absolutely.
And this is going to be a little mean because I know that this was a thing that you were still trying to figure out how to articulate even on the show. But you mentioned this on a recent show with U.S. Poet Laureate Arthur G, that you have an affinity for the way in which the Chinese language is written. And not to put you on the spot, but can you elaborate more for someone who is not familiar with the way that the language is written and constructed, why it's so grabbing?
So totally on the spot right now, but I always had an affinity for, and we're talking about poetry specifically too. There's just something about the way the Chinese language is structured that the lyricism and the musicality to when the poem is being spoken or sort of sing-songed, and it just, I mean, it literally sounds different from a Romance language, obviously. But I'm just always amazed at how much storytelling and emotions that can be conveyed into a simple couple of characters. And just to give a bit more context, far from Roman languages, one Chinese character can mean so many different things based on how it's built. And one of the examples that I think is commonly used is the word autumn. So the word autumn has two parts. One part represents sort of a grass or like a sprout that's growing. And on the other side, it means fire. And you put the two of them together, it's autumn. But when you put a third character in there, that's the word heart, then you create a different word that means the sorrows of autumn. And so that just gives you an idea of how complex one character can convey, let alone several of them. But even just say, a lot of poetry, typically there's probably 8 characters in a line, for example. There's so much emotion and storytelling conveyed in just the simple line with the 8 characters that I just cannot. My brain just, as I'm trying to articulate how I feel about this, it's just, I just am so in awe of what that language can convey.
So the piece of music that I used for all of the music on the Arthur G show was the Butterfly Lovers Violin Concerto, which is based off and this is where my knowledge gets a little bit fuzzy, so please correct me. It's based off of an ancient, not even an ancient, but a 400s, 500s epic poem about 2 courtiers who can't be together. And the piece itself was this, it's credited to 2 composers, which is already a little bit rare, but it was revealed throughout the composition. So many composers from mainland China had worked on this piece of music to create what they saw as, based on my understanding, the contribution of China to the Western musical canon, because it takes from so many stylistic cues that don't exist in the Western canon, like Yue opera and the instrumental stylings of the erhu and the pipa. And even though it's using Western instruments and Western tunings and the Western scale system, the way that it's able to express these ideas is distinctly East Asian and specifically Chinese. And it's really beautiful, and the way it paints the story in the last movement, there's this giant climax as, spoiler, one of the courtiers throws herself into the grave of the other, and they turn into butterflies, never to be separated again. And it's this giant climax, and then this really quiet moment of the butterflies floating away. You know, these very small, fragile creatures, but that can never be separated by human shenanigans.
Not the human shenanigans. Butterflies are really big sort of examples that a lot of poets like to use as sort of metaphor for relationships and love, and you see that actually still in a lot of the modern Chinese dramas that you can watch on Netflix now, and so that is I think you're pretty much on the mark, I think, in terms of the storytelling, and also a perfect transition to my next song. But want to talk about too that it is sort of based on what's called the Yue opera, which is a really popular Chinese opera that I think the Peking opera is also sort of under. One of them is under the other. I forget which direction, but you're right. I think it's a way of combining the classical Chinese music instruments and using those instruments as very distinctive Chinese music elements that you don't normally hear in the Western canon. And it's the perfect transition to my next song, because I love hearing a mix of those East versus West, or not versus. I don't think that's the best word to
when you're combining Eastern and Western musical elements.
Exactly. I love hearing the genre sort of blend, because I feel like nothing breaks barriers or transcends through barriers than using music in some ways, because music is something that is enjoyed all around the world. And I just really love hearing the mixed elements together, because it just kind of shows that we are so universal. We should have more togetherness, and there should be more exposure to instruments around the world. Like, it's not just that one. It's not just the guitar or the violin. And this is no shade on the guitar or violin, because I love both of those sounds. But wouldn't it be great if we lived in a world where instruments around the world is more known? Because I feel like we lose so much by not being exposed to it.
The trap beat drop was not something that I was expecting.
I love surprising you.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that this is from a Chinese drama, right?
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit more about C-dramas? Because I feel like C-dramas and K-dramas are kind of put into this other category as if they're not just television like anything else.
Right. Well, and that's one of those things where I understand the labeling, because we do have so much stuff out there, but it's also a very, I don't want to say it's a specifically American thing, but we are still quite young in terms of the history of us being exposed to other countries' pop culture, with the idea of Hollywood is not the only space where movies and entertainment and music happens. But just a quick background for those who are not familiar with this space, we would call a song like this an OST, which is an original soundtrack. And it's usually referred to music that are like theme songs or background music to C-dramas or K-dramas. And they are specifically composed and curated and written for that show. So whatever you're hearing right now is specific to this C-drama called Fangs of Fortune. And I didn't choose this song because of the drama. I just love how it's kind of badass. Come on.
Oh, no, this is a hype song for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a hype song. I listen to it sometimes before a show to hype myself up. But this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where I love hearing you can hear the classical Chinese instrument, whether or not you know what they are. But it's because a very different sound from what we're used to. And then you perhaps maybe expect not a rap song. I just love the juxtaposition that you hear in this one song. Like there's so much here that you don't normally hear ever. And so I fell into the Chinese drama world a couple years ago, and I think this kind of there's a connection to the stories I was sharing earlier about being reintroduced to the band Mayday. Mm-hmm. And kind of a similar experience where literally one evening I was on YouTube watching some random music performance, and this random comment in there was like, "Hey, are you guys here because of this?" And I was like, what is that? And it was a reference to a Chinese drama. And out of curiosity, I was like, I'm going to go check it out. Discovered that it was on Netflix. Once again, it was another click that changed the trajectory of my life. And this may sound really dramatic. It was quite dramatic. So the drama that this comment referred to is called The Untamed. It's a high fantasy Chinese drama, and it's the first Chinese drama that I've seen in a really, really long time. And just for context, dramas are just like shows that you watch on Netflix or whatever. And it's really common in Asia. Every evening at 8 o'clock, there's going to be some drama on your local ABC, NBC, CBS equivalent. But since I moved back to the States, I haven't really been in that space. And so that faithful day, summer of 2021, me clicking on this show called The Untamed, binged it, and then it changed my life very similarly to how Mayday changed my life. It was another reminder of how much I miss being
part of the, well, I don't want to say part of the culture, but in touch with that part of
totally
your culture.
Well, and it was also a time where we as a country has felt divided in a way that I think many of us had not witnessed. I think the division that we saw at the time was something that I think a lot of us perhaps read in textbooks or seen in movies, but had not experienced firsthand. And I think a lot of first generation, second generation, third, fourth Asian Americans sort of had a collective reckoning during that time where, okay, we're here in this country, but depending on what space you're in, you may or may not be accepted. And as you mentioned earlier, you realize that you're being othered by people that you didn't expect. And so I sort of had this long runway of discovering that, oh, it was actually really important for me to see people who looked like me on the screen. And I think this is something I shared before where I didn't feel like it was something that was really important or something I was thinking about as a kid. But I think when I was a kid, it's definitely not something that you talked about. And so that was a huge revelation for me in 2021, where I realized it was a big deal to see someone who looked like me, someone who perhaps spoke like me. We had the same eye color. And it sounds like such a small thing, but it was so big. And I went back to that mindset of like, oh, I've got to improve my language, you know. And then I did it in a way that was more than in 2010, because that was sort of a smaller impact. Whereas this one, but it led up to this moment. Like all of those moments were stepping stones to this moment in summer of 2021, where I had all of those revelations but those revelations, I don't know if that would have happened if it didn't happen during the time that it did.
It's beautiful that you hit that window.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when I think about it, because my life has not been the same since.
Speaking of hitting a window, we've got to go to a break real quick. You're going to hear a little bit of the games composer, I'm exposing myself as a gamer here, Yupeng Chen, on the way out. Another beautiful blend of classical Chinese elements and Western orchestral music. We'll be right back after this. From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Where We Live. I'm Dylan Reyes, in with Catherine Shen. We're doing a record poll today, and I want to ask you again, who is Catherine Shen? I think we're building a pretty good picture now, and Kat, thank you so much for joining me to help build that. So Tessa's compiled some feedback for me from our last show, and Okay, so we don't have any. So I get carte blanche to ask you whatever I want. And you also get carte blanche to answer however you want.
Ooh. Uh-oh.
Can you clear up one misconception you feel like people have about Taiwan? Is that too much? Your face is telling me that you're scared.
No, I'm just... So, yes, my eyes did go really wide. But it's only because I have said this multiple times, and I'm not joking. Like, I am not a good test taker. So I was just processing the question. But yes, you can still ask it.
Okay.
So the first thing that popped into my mind is Taiwan is not Thailand.
I don't know why I wasn't expecting that one.
Well, and it popped up because it still happens. So I'm just putting it out there that they're two different countries.
That was a way faster answer than I expected.
So your question took me off guard. My answer took you off guard.
Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, we can continue.
So, of course, I have to ask the question back to you. What is the biggest misconception that you would like to blast today about the Philippines? I mean,
see, now I'm realizing what a question that was to ask.
Yeah, you did it to yourself, really.
So the song I'm going to play now, which I think is pertinent to a misconception people have about the Philippines, is called Dahil sa iyo. It is a song by the famous Filipino songwriter Mike Velarde Jr., sung by Bilita Corrales. So the song was originally composed for a movie in 1938. Weirdly, in the American canon of theater songs and Tin Pan Alley, late Tin Pan Alley, I guess at this point, a very similar song appeared in 1940, which is titled Because of You. And if you don't speak Tagalog, that is a direct translation of Dahil sa'yo. Certainly my take is informed because of the area I come from, where there is an extremely large Philippine diaspora. Most of it is there because of the military. That's how my family came over. It's because of the U.S. Navy in 1969, 1 year before my dad was born. I think a lot of the people I meet that are not Southeast Asian and have no real relationship to the Philippines think of the Philippines sort of as the American client state of Southeast Asia. And there's just so much more to the culture than that. I think it's a very reductive view of a very complex place with tons of languages. If you don't know, almost everyone there is quadrilingual. And this is informed by my friends who live in and around Manila. So this is probably not true for all of the country. But you learn 4 languages. You learn your local dialect, which I had a lot of friends that were Ilocano, or that spoke Ilocano at home. One of my best friends spoke Bisaya with his parents all the time when I was a kid. And then you learn Filipino, the national language, and then you learn English, and then you learn Spanish. It's really informed by the history of colonization. And for those who don't know, when the Americans defeated the Spanish in the Spanish-American War, the Philippines was already in revolt. And it didn't really care who the colonizer was. You know, it just because the sign on the business changes doesn't mean you stop being upset that you don't have control over your own future. And, you know, it's a legacy that just continued through World War II and the Japanese. And I just wish more people understood that the Philippines isn't just like America's geopolitical buddy in Southeast Asia, but it's a real culture with so much to offer. It's a beautiful place, and I wish people gave it credit for the depth that it holds.
Right. And I'm optimistic that with the exposure of information and the fact that we're having this conversation is a way to introduce that to people who are not familiar with those spaces. And I'm actually curious to hear, and I want to ask you that. So, because we talked about sort of two major moments in my life that provided as stepping stones to each other, leading me up to this moment where we're unpacking a lot of things here, but what I've experienced over the last couple of years from that moment that I realized I saw Mayday in Taiwan, rediscovering this band in LA, California, discovering or rediscovering Chinese dramas in Hartford, Connecticut. These experiences has been so enriching to me that today I can't really imagine not having any of these elements in my life anymore. What are your thoughts about that in terms of yourself? When was that moment of curiosity that you learned all of this history about the Philippines and having these discussions with your friends?
So, this is going to sound unrelated, but I promise it is. I was talking to a friend recently about the end of an album for a band that we both like called Ginger Root. And he was explaining to me, he's like, I don't really get the album. It just kind of ends, it's sort of whatever. And I was like, well, I agreed on the first listen. But when you go back and you listen again and again and again, you hear and see all of these through lines that you didn't hear on your first listen. It's not an ending that just hits you in one moment. It slowly dawns on you. And I think that that's what really was happening for me with trying to figure out what being part Filipino meant. The presence of Isaac Moss certainly was helpful. And Tale Ricketson, who is another part-time producer here. And it was the first time that I had in Connecticut a lot of Filipino people around me. Because I think that was something I took for granted before. Growing up in the area I did, most of my friends were Filipino or part Filipino. Everywhere I went, I can get good Filipino food from just like a little mom and pop store on the corner that's 2 minutes from my house. I get a ridiculous amount of good food for $5. And I can hear the language being spoken. I could see people that looked like me. And when I moved here for college, several things hit me at once because I'm from Norfolk, Virginia. So people say it's not the South. I argue that it's the South. Based on the amount of Confederate flags I saw around me.
We will unpack that in a different show.
There was so much to be shocked about culturally, I think it was my point. And I think the thing that I didn't realize until later, because the thing that hit me in the face first was how bad the food is here. And the thing that slowly dawned on me later is that there weren't really people around me that looked like me anymore. I get mistaken for Hispanic up here way more than back home. Because, that they have a large diaspora here. And you know what? I can't actually remember a specific moment. There was a night about a year ago. I was just sitting on my porch and it was hot out and I was just fanning myself. I was like, oh, man, I would love mango juice right now. And my first thought was like, oh, I'll just run down the store to get it. I was like, oh, right. That's not really a thing here. Because I was thinking of these, I think they're called Cool Freeze pouches that taste a little bit like lead, but mostly like mango. And then I was like, wow, I'm really hungry. I would love pancit and lumpia. And I was like, there's one store I know of in Middletown that I could go to get it. But it's not like near me. It's not around me. And I think the combination of a lot of these small moments where I was realizing that there was a lot of stuff that I was missing, that I was just kind of ignoring earlier in my life. That's how I sort of realized how big a part of my identity this is. And I have really been working to incorporate it into who I am and haven't really looked back.
Isn't it amazing how it's those seemingly very small moments, but they're really big moments for us because it sounds like we experience that loss a lot more than you think.
Yeah, you're passively digesting it over so much time that until you have something external that forces you to look at that, you're like, wow, I didn't realize how much of myself that I was just ignoring for the sake of, whatever, just soldiering on.
I feel like I have so many thoughts after that. Because I feel like, I mean, I always come back to this. I'm always surprised or shocked, or I just can't believe that we're talking about this in the way that we are, because there's no way something like this could have happened when I was in high school or when I was in middle school. And I'm always wondering what would have happened if I heard that during the younger years, when I think a lot of us, I mean, we were just kind of going with it, right? I don't know if we were really in spaces where we question. And it's not because we lack a sense of curiosity. I feel like it's because we know if we express ourselves in a certain way or mention that we love this thing that happened to be anywhere close to being Asian related, then the judgment happens. Because I think with what you just shared, it reminded me of these really, really micro moments of maybe I mentioned that I like this anime, or there's this one Chinese singer, or I'm just making this up right now because it's been too far along and too long ago, but then having these comments like, oh, of course you like those things because you're Asian. But when I say, oh, I like Superman, for example, I'm a huge Superman Clark Kent fan, then they're surprised that I like Superman. And so you get my meaning in the sense of you don't really have a place in any of those spaces. And in both of those spaces, you have to explain yourself. So I think as a 15-year-old or a 18-year-old, a 25-year-old, I think those versions of myself, I think you have that automatic thought of, well, if all I'm going to get is judgment by people's whose opinions that you probably don't even care about, why would I put myself in that space in the first place?
So there's a place where I'm a regular. And when you were talking about never feeling like you really are accepted in any of these spheres, I was thinking about how places where you are regular are so important, because it's a third space where you can feel accepted, not based on really anything about you other than you should all show up at the same place at the same time. I think a lot of mixed race kids have this dilemma where they don't really feel like they belong in any particular culture that they're a part of. So having a place like this is so valuable to me because it's a place where I don't feel judged at all about any part of me. I just show up and I talk with the people at the counter, and it's nice. And actually, this place is where I made my first full Filipino friend in Connecticut. And certainly that's coloring how I'm thinking about this. But it's nice to have a place where you can feel comfortable without having to explain yourself.
Are you ready for a vibe change?
No, I never am. I don't know why I wouldn't expect this.
Okay, so I feel like this theme needs no introduction, but for those select few who might not know what this is, it's actually called Linus and Lucy. That's actually kind of shocking because I associate this theme with Snoopy and Peanuts in general. And I chose this theme because My husband actually would be the first person to say that I am so influenced by the Peanuts gang.
That is no lie.
No, so it would be really remiss to have this conversation and not have the Peanuts theme.
I'm actually surprised we didn't cover Snoopy last time, because I'm looking directly at a Snoopy like tumbler that's holding your water on the table.
Right, and there's like a little Snoopy tchotchke and all that. But yeah, and it all started, I think if my memory serves correctly, it all started, another shocker by the way, with a little stuffed Snoopy plushie.
Which connects to a question that I really want to ask you, but we do not have time to do this on this side of the break. So we're going to go to a break and we'll come right back. And I'm going to follow up about those Snoopy plushies. Stay with us. From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Where We Live. I'm Dylan Reyes, in with Catherine Shen, trying to paint a picture of who she is. Nominally through a record poll, though I feel like we haven't really listened to very much music. But before we get sidetracked, there was a question I wanted to ask you before we went to the break. You found the Peanuts and Snoopy through a little Snoopy plushie. And if anyone has ever been in the talk show studio, they would know that our space is adorned with plush animals. And in fact, you are holding our giant Squishmallow Priscilla right now in your lap. Is there a part of your soul that you think stuffed animals speak to?
My heart is literally a plushie. Yeah, I think so. And I don't really know if there is a moment I can pinpoint that to, but I think I can only credit my parents, who probably have a lot of regret right now, but I mean,
why?
I think there are worse things for me to love. But,
oh yeah, certainly.
Right. But I mean, I was always sort of surrounded by stuffed animals, and I've always loved playing with them. And I have favorites like I think most children do. And I also think as a millennial, there's certainly, I think, not a trend, but I think it's right now we're all sort of at the time of our lives where we are kind of, sort of, a little bit perhaps adults.
Maybe.
And you're making some semblance of adult money. And there is this desire to sort of re-own your childhood. And I say all of that not because I feel strongly that that's what I'm doing, but for me, I feel like watching that sort of happen, both on the internet and in real life, I think for me, it's less trying to hold on to or bring back or fight against whatever the childhood thing is. For me, it's more like it's a small joy that can bring big joy. And my favorite compliment of our talk show space that's filled with squishmallows and plushies is it looks like a preschool classroom. What is a happier, more vibrant and colorful and playful place than a preschool classroom? We need to be playful as adults, and this environment helps that.
Okay, so before I ask you what I want to ask you about play, you've got a little song that you think is play?
I do have a little song that I think is play, and I want to say that you asked me this on the fly, and it's called Flying on Paper. So it's by a Chinese singer named, that's so formal. Well, I don't know what I just did.
And his government name is?
His government name is Liu Yuning, and we played his OST earlier. And when you asked the question earlier, I thought of this song immediately because it's a little bit, it's about play. It's about wanting to go around the world flying on a paper airplane. And then he goes on to describe what he sees, what's happening. And there's just something really whimsical and fun about that.
I want to ask you about this idea that you shared with me, off the air, which is that you really miss recess.
I do.
as like a built-in time of your day where you get to be playful and you get to be physical. Can you explain a little bit more about that? Because I totally agree. I just want to hear what you think.
I mean, why don't we have that for adults? Right? Like, there's so many things that we have and we think about for kids, but why don't we think about that for adults? Because we need breaks too. Hashtag, we need recess. Well, and also like going outside and getting some air. If you're an office worker, I feel like it kind of goes without saying it's a good time to go out and just be and maybe forget for 15 minutes. And I think we forget how much of a difference that can make. And I also feel like I'm making it way more than it should be. It's just, why don't we have recess? Why don't we have a playground with a sandbox?
Why can't we do kickball on our lunch break?
Yeah, kickball, hopscotch, jump rope, juice boxes, fruit snacks, pretzels. I mean, I think we're missing out.
One thing that I did really notice moving here from the South is that there's much more of a grind set culture here when it comes to work. It's way more like we got to be in and we got to be going. Not to say that here is like that, but in a lot of places around here and with a lot of friends, I've noticed that they're very all in on work.
Well, no, I think it's like a global problem, like the hustle culture. And I have very mixed feelings about it because if I didn't hustle, I would not have been able to do what I wanted to do, and it would not have led to this moment. But I also am somebody who would not suggest that if I know you're not somebody who wants to do that or can do that.
Because, or is really fed by it.
Yeah, because it's a very at what cost type of situation where, of course, there's going to be a level of hustle for whatever you do. But I feel like we also use that word very differently today.
I have one more song to take us out. Last question. In the media landscape, it's incredibly easy to diminish humans into stories or beats or bylines. How do you cultivate the opposite attitude to purposefully approach the world with empathy?
Well, that's a great question because I don't know if what I'm doing is not flattening you per se, because everyone is so different and everyone reacts to things so differently. I told this to a city councilman in California, and I don't think he believed me, but I go into everything with a sense of curiosity, and that sounds so lame and cliche.
It sounds very NPR of
No,
you.
it really does. I can't believe I just said that. But it's so true. I don't really have any other way of describing it. I am genuinely curious about everything because most of the topics we talk about, I'm not an expert in. And so I'm super curious as to how did you get interested in the thing? You know, how did you know you wanted to do this? How did you blah, blah, blah? I mean, I think there's a reason why I became a journalist in the first place. And I think it's sort of along the journey of me learning what am I like as a human being, also what am I like as a journalist. I think they kind of go hand in hand where do I want to get the story? Obviously. Do I want to be the first? Maybe, depending on what the story is. Do I want to do a good job at it? Of course I do. But ultimately, I want you to feel comfortable and I want you to leave the room feeling that it was a good experience. And I think kindness goes a really long way. And I do hope that that is apparent when you come and sit by me.
One final time, who is Catherine Shen? This picture. Are the edges a little sharper? Are the details more refined? I hope this conversation was able to do that for you. Kat, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
That's all for Where We Live today. I'm Dylan Reyes, joined by Catherine Shen. We hosted and produced this episode with help from Tess Terrible and Patrick Scahill. You can download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. Did this show help you find a better portrait of yourself? Do you have questions you want us to ask Kat next time? You can reach out to us at wherewelive@ctpublic.org. Thank you so much for listening.